In this Remnant 2 review, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the anticipated sequel to Remnant from the Ashes, which brings a lot of new mechanics and improvements to the franchise. Developed by Gunfire Games, Remnant 2 takes the foundation laid by its predecessor and builds upon it. But the question is, should you play Remnant 2? Is it still a Souls-like game? And how is character progression? Watch on to find out. Remnant 2 is set in a post-apocalyptic Earth and is a direct sequel to Remnant from the Ashes. You play as the Traveler, an individual who can traverse through realms via world stones and possesses extraordinary will and resolve. The world stones connect Earth to other locations and beings and is one of the greatest human discoveries and triumphs of mankind, but also their gravest downfall. The main enemy in Remnant 2 is the Root, a grave threat that has left humanity on the brink of extinction and brought about the collapse of civilization. Humanity strives to recover, setting a base of operations in Ward 13, the last standing bastion of safety and a recurring location from the previous title. While the story of Remnant 2 continues along the same lines as From the Ashes, the narrative design may feel clumsy at times. Rather than progressing into a crescendo of intrigue, the game fizzles out when it comes to lore aspects and fails to capitalize on the most interesting parts of Remnant's unique setting. Story progression is also lacking, and I found myself begrudging my unrelatable companions and insipid supporting characters. The Traveler seems stuck in an unfortunate cockiness that was off-putting as well, leaving me with little emotional investment in any of the available cast, which is a shame. Despite the shortcomings in narrative development and writing, the Remnant 2 team did successfully create an interesting world. The world building is actually quite enticing, and I found myself pondering and investing my own independent backstory to the circumstances of each world that I visited. How did this place come to be? What led to its current state? Will my actions here change the fate of this realm? Should I try a different approach in my next playthrough? My interactions with the factions and parties that I met in other realms felt like the true story, even though they are considered side content or flavor text. In short, the story and narrative of Remnant 2 is not as compelling as I would like for my RPGs, but there are highs to be found by looking thoroughly, and fortunately the game does shine on its core focus, gameplay. Level design, overall gameplay, and replayability are Remnant 2's strongest aspects, and it's clear this is where Gunfire focused their talents and efforts. Remnant 2 features a great blend of exploration, combat, and character progression. As a player, you'll embark on a journey through diverse and dangerous environments, encountering a wide range of enemies and bosses along the way, and with the freedom to engage them via a vast array of intricate character builds. By now, we all know how progression goes for Souls-like titles. However, this is where the Remnant series deviates from the template by relying on RNG when generating the content of your playthrough. For clarity, each playthrough will be different as the game assigns and randomizes the events and scenarios that a player encounters in a certain world. This covers dungeons, map layouts, enemies, main objectives, and even NPCs. Expect different encounters and gameplay variations that may involve puzzles reminiscent of the Resident Evil series, or a little bit of platforming and avoiding deadly traps on certain levels when cycling on each playthrough. I quite enjoy this mechanic, as starting a new playthrough provides a fresh experience due to the variety of stories involved, and cycling through these worlds makes your character stronger every run. The more you hunt for rare loot, the more your character develops via XP for your archetypes equipped, and through valuable materials to upgrade your weaponry. This provides an addicting loop that can become quite obsessive, particularly if you're taking it on with friends. There are drawbacks, of course, as you may find farming time consuming when trying to hunt a specific boss in a dungeon for certain loot, especially archetype engrams, which let you access different archetypes, since I needed to restart the worlds countless times and check if the dungeon I was looking for was generated each time. The whole RNG design is a double-edged sword, and players with limited time may not appreciate this aspect, while those that enjoy a bit of a grind and some farming to acquire the gear they need will likely look at this as a major plus point of the game. Gunfire has provided some ways to circumvent this in a sense though, as players can engage in two modes, the main campaign mode and adventure mode. The main campaign is self-explanatory. This determines the progress of the story. It is advisable to start your first playthrough here rather than spamming adventure mode, so your progression follows certain main story objectives rather than plunging into new worlds without it in mind. Once the player unlocks all worlds, these worlds can be revisited in Ward 13's Worldstone. Adventure mode, on the other hand, serves as quick matches, and these can be reset limitlessly while retaining the character's main character progression. Remnant 2's combat is fast-paced, it's intense, requires precise timing and strategic thinking that follows the familiar tempo of the Souls-like genre. Some of the original allure of Remnant from the Ashes was its nods to the From Software titles, and Souls fans will see the similarities and note the varied applications of familiar mechanics. Intermingling Souls and traditional RPG mechanics with third-person shooting and some new and clever ideas, the gameplay is simply a lot of fun. The controls are improved from the previous title, and their fluidity allows for quick movement and dynamic combat maneuvers. Manage your ammo and time your shots carefully while calculating dodge timing and iframing against hordes of enemies. Remnant II is a step up from its predecessor in most cases, and enemy designs have also been improved. Like in a Souls game, every enemy poses a decent threat regardless of its size, and each world features its own kind of creatures and enemies with their own strengths and weaknesses for you to discover and exploit. There are many enemy groups, and they can become overwhelming, with elite mobs having the assistance of groups of minions that you have to thin out before you can proceed to face the elite. These encounters are fun to play, and you will probably appreciate them even more when playing cooperatively. If you're an enthusiast of the genre and are accustomed to traditional Souls-like design where the main focus is melee combat, even if you have modest experience in shooters, you should have no issues thanks to the well-thought-out combat mechanics. Transitioning and adapting to Remnant's gameplay is easy to do. If you have not played the first title, you should expect to die a lot while learning and adjusting to the new mechanics and tempo, which is typical in Souls-like design. The overall difficulty is debatable as skill-based, but it may pose a challenge for beginners, while fans of the previous game will be right at home, particularly with the approach to boss encounters, and each boss encounter has its own mechanics. It is plain to see that the bosses in Remnant II are not as good as those you'll find in From Software titles. However, each of the bosses in Remnant II has mechanics that you must discern and counter, from finding weak spots to identifying arena-safe spaces. These can also come to feel gimmicky, but overall the combination of level design, enemy, and boss farming is a good gameplay loop with entertaining combat, mainly because of the build variety. So let's look into that a little bit more. Defeating hordes of enemies and relatively good bosses is fun on its own, but how much more fun is it if correlated with an intricate class system and a competitive array of weapon types? Remnant II provides a hefty amount of customization with a good variety of builds to suit different playstyles. Archetypes are Remnant II's classes, and you gain class experience as you kill enemies. Similar to D&D classes, as the archetype level goes up, the more features in the form of perks and skills the player unlocks. Players can start with distinct classes right from the start by selecting one of the Hunter, the Challenger, the Handler, and the Medic. Each type has unique gameplay, and they all interact in a multiplayer party. For example, the Hunter is the basic DPS that specializes in critical hits while also marking enemies, while the Medic provides support to the team with helpful buffs such as damage mitigations and heals. The most interesting part about the classes is not only that you unlock more classes by playing further into the game, but that you can also slot a second class and gain levels in that class as well. Multi-classing is massive in the sense that each build can have a primary archetype and equip a second one, enjoying all the passive buffs, perks, and unique traits of it. This makes builds and combinations really fun to explore and discover, which is only then enhanced further by equipment. Archetypes are already a treat in Remnant II, but how about weapons and armor? There's a significant repertoire of both traditional and otherworldly guns and melee weapons available in the game. Weapons that have unique stats and effects are categorized into three main types: long guns, melee weapons, and handguns. Further customization can be made by adding mods to these weapons. Armor passive bonuses from the first game have been removed, so you now don't have to focus on a specific set and can instead equip each slot of your inventory based on the benefits each piece provides, which is one of the main changes requested by the fans of the original title. Remnant II's level design was a surprisingly bright point for me. I could see the efforts the developers put into making each level and world unique as possible for the player to explore, and this was definitely appreciated. I found myself frequently halting just to take in the landscapes in front of me. The lush forests of Yeisha and its floating islands, the unearthly and massive barren fields of Nerud, and the dead spaceships and alien nests of Lossom's dark fantasy-themed castles, and maze-like city streets to the mysterious and bizarre labyrinth that connects all the worlds. Each of these worlds provided compelling encounters due to the well-thought-out environmental storytelling. The world design is also supported by a strong soundtrack that matches the setting and delivers the right atmosphere for nearly every situation. The voice acting is also competent and well-suited to the game, making everything work well together to help you lose yourself in the creative vision of the team. While graphics are not the top of the industry, they are improved from the previous title and are serviceable for modern gaming. You'll probably notice this most on the character models and on the cosmetics for armor and weapons as you play. Performance-wise, the game ran smoothly for me at 2K resolution with 80 frames per second. Your preferences and mileage may vary depending on your PC. We did, however, encounter several bugs and rendering issues. However, we did have a very early access copy of the game that is missing crucial patches that should be done by launch, so overall I don't think there will be anything game-breaking. That said, and as always, we cannot verify how the game will look after the day 1 patch, so if you have performance-related concerns, you can wait until then and check out our streams to see how it's looking on launch day. Replayability is one of Remnant 2's greatest strengths, but if you don't like the loot farm, it can also be its greatest flaw. If you're the type of player who loves exploring an ever-changing world and loves to tinker with builds via RNG, this game is for you. Endgame activities include trying harder difficulties while improving your builds, revamping your equipment, or exploring the different options for the many random scenarios you encounter as side stories. But why dive into a sea of RNG alone when you can play with friends? Much like its predecessor, Remnant 2 offers a rewarding multiplayer experience. Team up with friends or random players online to tackle challenging missions together and explore intricate map layouts. I really enjoy my time with the game, and the cooperative gameplay adds another layer of excitement and strategy as players can combine their skills and abilities to overcome formidable enemies and bosses together. The seamless integration of multiplayer features makes Remnant 2 a truly social and collaborative experience. My first playthrough in Remnant 2 took 25 to 30 hours or so, but bear in mind the game progression is highly dependent on the player's skill level, so this may vary greatly. Your first playthrough is almost the introduction to the game, as the whole point is to delve deeper into the difficulties and get more loot. Considering the Steam Standard Edition is being sold at $49.99, the sheer amount of content that the game offers makes it worth every penny for players who enjoy this kind of gameplay loop, particularly if they want to play with others. Final thoughts. Remnant 2 is a step up compared to its predecessor in just about every way, and it's clear that Gunfire put effort into listening to fan feedback. Striking world design, immersive character progression and combat, cooperative multiplayer features, an engaging gameplay loop, and good replayability propel Remnant 2 forward, where many games have taken steps backwards. If you're a new player and still on the fence, I highly suggest hopping into the game despite its perceived difficulty, as you can easily find help online to get over the initial hurdles, like on our wiki for instance. Remnant 2 is a solid sequel that enhances the emerging Souls-like genre, adding to its unique identity and its ideas to its growing pool. A fun and engaging multiplayer experience makes it well worth the price tag, even if you're generally not a fan of shooters.